Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up here on Landy's Crypto Corner, powered by the Goxstein News Network. Today is June 20th, 2025. We're looking at Bitcoin here on the daily, and we're going to take a look at the weekly as well. But Bitcoin has begun its move below 104 on a close. We have seen the move down to, in yesterday's candle, to around 102.350, 102.360. This area is a big zone of interest down to 101 on a close especially. And that is from the closes over here on the highs. But, Bitcoin bulls need to defend this area on a close. You'll see that there is a yellow zone down here. And it's just this low. So this low at 101.570 to the low at 101, what is this, 101.500 or so. It's 101.570 to the actual low at 100,377. Sorry. And that was the swing of the 100,700 low over here. And that area is going to be very, very important. If Bitcoin begins to close below here, it will also hit expansion. Now, if it does start to close below the lower second, which is the closing low of the range thus far at that 101.5 area, that is expansion on the daily into the actual low. While it still could provide for a swing under and a close back inside, I would just be aware that we're likely looking at expansion to this structure over here, which is 98 to the top side at 95. Beware of the 93.5, that big weekly that initiated the move up to a brand new high after the range low recovery over here and consolidation. So that's really where we got to see the bulls kind of defend this area if we're looking for any new all-time high anytime soon here. I do think that it would take a little while. Although I would expect some reactions from the bottom side of the range here. We are going into the weekend. So that does mean that we should talk about a few other things here. And let me go ahead and get rid of this for right now. Let's bring up the local support and resistance zones. I'm sure that many regular viewers are very familiar with this. I don't want to see closes below 101, essentially. If we start to see closes below 101, not only are we going to be running that swing low, but very highly likely going to run the structure over here from the high around 98 to 95 here, right where the point of control is, or the highest traded volume area of this range up here at around $96,000 fair game. Anywhere below there, eyes on that weekly high or low, that 93.5, right? We did get a swing below it. We were trading around it for some time. After Bitcoin got the original range lows up here recovered, it rejected and then just sat on that weekly. So, I would say that the bulls don't want to lose that area if we head down to it. Although, there is still the range low. So there is historical support down here as well. I'm really looking at that weekly as a big area to the downside. Now back to the upside. Here's what actually happened in the lower term time frames. So yesterday, it's still Friday for me, even though the Saturday candle is open. In the Thursday session, there was no traditional market trading. It was a holiday, right? So in this case, what we ended up with is a rally in the lower term time frame right here from the Thursday session right into the pre-market open, and then right when market open occurred in the United States, slam it down, try to hold it, and then break down. Also note that this is a major fib level at the 1272. So it was, some pre-market trading getting into position. And, prior to that, we had seen, from the Tuesday session down after the attempt to try and hold the 106 area, deviated it, found it as resistance, compressed right into the open of the Friday session, and then boom, boom, boom. So I did find that pretty funny to watch the rally up into the actual market open. Now, as it stands on the weekly, where, by the way, let's just touch on the daily here just one more time. What is, there is the potential for, um, for the bulls to continue to get hidden bullish divergence here, but it is kind of wearing a little thin when you have a choppy kind of sideways trend going on here, because we had the uptrend. We then began with a lower high, the downtrend into lower lows, lower high, lower low. We got a trend break, and then we're back into higher low, lower high swing, and then lower high close, and now lower low territory as it relates to this trend right here. This is still trendless, and it still could get support down on the bottom side here by that lower second, but you start seeing closes down below there. We're looking for expansion to the lows, and then the high side structure into the pivots over here for the entire range. And to the upside, same kind of deal. Back above 106, and again, it was a perfect, this 12-hour was very, very telling, right? It was a perfect rejection on the 12-hour for a closing basis. Swing into there, now swing right down to the support side. And, it's back above 106 on a close. Then I'd be looking for fair game, up to the 107. Start to look above there at the 108 to 110 region, essentially up here. Anywhere above there, then we're looking for the all-time highs and higher. And that's still the setup as it stands on the daily, because this is just a range. We'll see if we get some price action and volatility over the weekend, or if things just kind of go sideways. But back above 110, we're looking 110 to 112, and then for expansion into, close over close. If it gets it and doesn't swing it, then we're looking for like the next leg to start on the daily at minimum. Now, when looking at this on the weekly, we'll go ahead and get rid of the local support and resistance zones of interest here. And by the way, yes, this bearish divergence is still in play. And where is the bearish control zone? Bearish control zone is $100,000. So again, I've been pretty consistent with this whenever I've been asked. Above $100,000 on closes, still fair, but I would prefer to see above 101 on closes. But weekly, so we do have the potential for anywhere below last week's low, right around the 102,750, 102.7 area, to put in a high. You'll note that we don't have a high yet, but we do have a swing structure, right? So we have a swing higher high, swing higher low, and the potential for this to be a swing lower high. So that would imply that if it starts to paint the actual closing high, even though we have a bit of a swing downtrend with this lower high, if this candle just closes red, doesn't mean much until we see the closing high in. And then, it doesn't mean much until we see the closing high in, and then we see the 100,377 breakdown, right? So we would need to see the closing high put in somewhere below 102,750 or so. Then this would be a complex closing high, even though we do have a higher high, higher low, lower high structure on a swing basis. Still be a complex closing high. We'd be looking for continuation below the 100,377. So it fits into everything we just talked about on the daily. Then we'd be looking somewhere around $95,000 to $98,000. That just so happens to be where the current basis band is. If course, that's the 20 simple on the weekly. And we are looking at the possibility of any closes below 104, as I've mentioned. That's the upper first standard deviation. And if we close the weekly under here, typically the way that bands kind of work is this is kind of the volatility zone of interest between the upper first and the basis. Now, I would expect the basis to be somewhere around $96,000, as it is kind of neutral right now. And I would expect the way that price is kind of shaping up for, maybe the upper first to be 104.5 or something like that. If this were to close anything like this, that'd be kind of the zone of interest. But again, we'd have to see the low there, that 100,377. That daily low on a close to the swing low that I first highlighted when I opened this video to be fair game. And then, from the weekly standpoint, we still went from downtrend to a trend break. This is still a trend break, even though the swing structure is shifting. If we do put in a higher high and a close, we're looking for higher low, equal low structure. From there is the more statistically likely outcome. I know I've said this a million times, but I think it bears repeating. as there are quite a lot of new people that haven't had a chance to watch all these videos, or maybe don't even know that I upload Monday, Wednesday, Friday on a consistent basis. But in this case, what it is that I would be looking for, right, is something like this is still in play, but I don't know if it's going to be in play very much longer. So we'll use, this is just an example, not what I think is going to happen, although sometimes the LARP lines do work out. What we're looking for is higher low equal low structure. So this would be an example of a higher low, right? And then this would be your trend reversal setup from a weekly standpoint. Now, I would argue that if the weekly starts to turn, we're probably looking at lower. And this is, where, and please don't take this as I think this is what's going to happen for price point. But, this would be, your higher low trend reversal setup, and then your trend reversal confirmation as weekly closes back above the most recent higher high. So we have the higher high. More statistically likely outcome is to come in and look for when this high paints, wherever it is, whether it's here or higher, that we are looking for higher low or equal low structure. And in this case, that would be your trend reversal setup. And then your trend reversal confirmation is when we break back above the most recent higher high. That doesn't mean that will always be the case, right? You can get a trend reversal setup and then go into lower highs and then take out the trend reversal setup, which then shifts structure. In this case, it would just be a giant accumulation structure. And, that is the more statistically likely outcome. It's a lower probability, but that would be higher high to lower low. This would be your bearish scenario. That's a fairly low statistical likelihood from here. But we'll doesn't mean that it's off the board. It does have to be considered in the longer term, and understand that the weekly is going to throw on any closing high a regular bullish or bearish divergence, right? It's been throwing bullish divergences on the other side here, and those are hidden bull divs off of the lows. And in this case, we do see that there is a higher high on RSI, lower high where we are right now. So higher highs over here for RSI, lower highs for RSI with the higher high. So we have a regular bearish divergence in play here, but understand that I look for in-trend bearish divergence as the most powerful. So this initial drive, if it does populate, would be corrective. And that's where, we begin to look at things like higher low, equal low structure as the more statistically likely outcome. In this case, we've got a momentum pivot of 111,500, and that weekly isn't anywhere close to that right now. But, if we get some sort of insane rally over the weekend, be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, I would say keep an eye on the 12-hour and daily. That's going to be, I love the 12-hour for this, by the way. The 12-hour is always very telling. Of course, know your support and resistance zones, but for momentum, if we do hold the lows and we get a shift in momentum on the 12-hour, 1045 would do that for the current 12-hour session candle for this Saturday open. But if we see, for instance, the 12-hour start to change structure, right? It is a 12-hour downtrend right now, right? We've got lower highs and lower lows right here. But if it does hold the lows, specifically this low over here, or deviate, and we don't see daily closes under there, but it deviates and then throws bullish divergence or something like that, and then begins to trend break, then start looking at that that daily, because then you want to see that follow through into the daily, and that can give you an edge on the daily. I love the 12-hour for that. Obviously, I use the lower term time frames to gauge the 12-hour. But this video would be more of an instructional video at that point and less of my thoughts on price action. But if we do see the high taken out at 106,500 here, well, obviously that would be above the pivot for the 12-hour at 104.5, and that would be turning momentum. That would also be a trend break, and then we'd be looking for higher prices, and then possibly a trend reversal setup on the 12-hour that could lead through to the daily from there. And right now, not too much to talk about. It's trapped in a range. Bulls want to hold the range lows, and bears want to push through them. So That's what to watch for over the weekend. Again, watch very closely closes below 102, 750 or so. That will paint a technical high. Some are going to have more aggressive criteria to the downside, meaning that some will say like, no, I want the high to be painted. Technical high is going to be painted below there. That's the swing area, where we're going to see all of your favorite indicators, and where I would consider this a technical closing high in the weekly. As for the daily, you just want to see that area to the downside that I pointed out. Same area that is the swing area on the daily there is the swing area in the weekly at 100,000. 377 hold up on the weekly closes and daily closes to prevent further falling down from there. Otherwise, you can trade it down to some lower levels. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. I will be back on Monday, of course, with the Macro Monday video, and we'll see where we're at for this weekly close. So have a great weekend, and I will talk to you then. Take care. Landy out.